Welcome back to another chapter of the Crown podcast. Today we have an inspiring conversation lined up for you with a very, very special guest and longtime mentor of mine, Steve Keating. Steve is an expert in leadership and has amassed a dedicated Twitter, now X, following of over 1 million without selling. In a world so obsessed with numbers and self gratification, Steve uses his platform to inspire, educate, and one of my favorites, share random and insightful facts about life and the world. I recommend you all follow him today at Lead Today. Steve, it's great to have you on today. Long overdue. Thank you for sharing this time with us.
Well, thank you, Steve. You know how I feel about you. I can't tell you. It is truly an honor to be with you. When you reached out, I've been looking forward to this since that very moment. It's funny. Somebody asked me who the five uh, people that I respect most on Twitter were, and your name is always in the five.
Oh, wow.
It's
Thank
people
you.
like you and Bob Berg and Dan Rockwell. I mean, the thing is, Steve, I read your stuff and it's like so many times my my initial reaction is, wow, that's amazing. That is so thoughtful, so profound in many cases. And so real that it just it's like in the United States, our one of our television networks used to have all their top shows on a Thursday night, and they called it must see TV. Well, you're a must read post for me whenever I see your stuff. So
Bless you. Thank you very much.
I read your stuff, you read your post, and they inspire me. So it is truly great to be here.
Thank you. Okay, so I touched on leadership in my intro. Um, when we look around the world, major organizations, the government, we're not really seeing presented great leadership values. They're not being portrayed or exemplified or shared in the mainstream. Often it's the case that business and the business world can be quite cutthroat, kill or be killed, or every man or woman for themselves. And it feels like, those fundamental tools of integrity and empathy have been removed from leadership. Um, in your opinion, why do you think these trends are formed? And how do you think from within your world that it has impacted the world of leadership?
Well, that's a great question, Stephen. And I believe that leadership, true, authentic leadership, is really hard work. And it requires a great deal of patience. When to lead another human being, we need to invest part of ourselves into that person. And it takes time to see the results of that. And I don't know how this happened, but in the world at large, and certainly in some societies in particular, uh, we've become an instant gratification kind of world, and we want to see results for our efforts right away. And when we don't, we tend to go a different path. And I look at it in businesses all the time where um, are people in leadership positions. And I make a big distinction between leaders and people who merely occupy the leadership positions. And so people in leadership positions um, may make an attempt to actually lead. And when you actually lead other people, you earn their commitment. But that, again, takes time. And when they don't get that commitment quickly enough, they resort to settling for the compliance of their people. And they begin to do things that a leader wouldn't normally do, either threatening their people, um, you know, uh, doling out harsh punishment to their people, treating their people as things assets instead of real human beings. And it just becomes a downward spiral from there. All because they didn't have the patience, I think, and the perseverance to continue to work with people when things go wrong.
Okay, so patient. So that's a lot of people struggle with patience, and um, and I think there are obviously ways to develop patience or become a more patient person. But what other skills and essential qualities do you feel are important for the next generation of leaders? And how can we nurture these skills in the young people who are coming up?
Oh, it's interesting. I have an ongoing discussion with a friend of mine who I believe to be a great leader, and we talk about which characteristic is most important for a leader. And his position is that judgment is the most important characteristic that a leader can have because you make so many different judgments. And my position is that integrity is the most important characteristic of leadership. And in defense of my position, I will say that many times uh, a lack of integrity results in incredibly poor judgment. We've all heard it said that, when somebody does something wrong, it's not a big deal, but the cover up, trying to hide what they've done wrong, leads to some really, really poor judgment and makes the problem bigger. And so I still believe that it's integrity. But here's the interesting thing to me for what I do. Um, I try to help organizations develop better leaders, but I can't teach leadership. Leadership is modeled. People do what leaders do far faster than they do what leaders say to do. And so the only way we can truly um, teach younger people how to lead is by modeling successful leadership characteristics. And I can go in and do a presentation on what those great qualities or what the qualities of great leaders are and what to look for in a great leader. But we need to model that. And to me, there are fewer truly great, authentic leaders in the world than there were 20 years ago, which makes those models fewer and far between. And in a business setting, when you're promoted into a leadership position, you're going to lead, and I put that in parentheses, you're going to lead the same way you were led. And if you were led by someone who wasn't very effective, it's really a battle for you to become an effective leader because we just do what we've seen, not what we've been told. And so that's a huge challenge. But I talk to leaders about that all the time, that as someone in a leadership position, you are the model of successful behavior. And what you want to see from your people, you need to first show your people. That's the actual model of successful leadership development.
So that's patience, that's integrity, and I guess what we're touching on here is mentorship. And I can speak for myself. I've based a large part of my business model and non-sales approach from the guidance that you've given me, that I've seen you model within your own work. And I've been doing this for many, many years, where I make it quite a point of myself never to ask anyone to purchase anything from me or to buy from me. And that works for me. And that's quite the opposite of the world that we live in, where we're always being advertised to and told of some lack that we have, and then there's a fix for it. But with this in mind, this mentorship, you weren't even aware of the impact that you've had within my business. And so again, to the integrity, you doing things the right way is modeling a pathway for other aspiring leaders such as myself. But how can mentors role model and how can mentors and role models take a a better stance in their position as being mentors for the next generation? How can they continue to run their businesses in a way that's profitable and sustainable, but with also keeping an eye on those who are coming behind them, who are watching and looking up to them?
Yep. Well, first, let me say this, Steve, about mentoring. To everyone listening to this, it makes no difference where you are in your life or in your career. You will be more effective if you have a mentor than if you don't. Mentors, a true mentor can make such a positive difference in your life because one of the things they do is they present to us an accurate picture of who we really are. I don't know about you, but when I look in the mirror, I don't have any flaws. I mean, I've got this all dialed in, but I've been so blessed to have good mentors in my life who will look at me and say, "Ah, come on, you know better than that. Let me tell you what I see when I look at this situation. You need to be thinking about it this way." And and they really will stop us from getting off track. They'll bring us back to the center. A good mentor will understand um, your core values, will understand what your goals and objectives are in life. And if you're getting off that track, they can bring us back on. I often say this, but if if we are lying to ourselves, then we'll lie to anybody. And we maybe don't lie to ourselves, but you never want to underestimate the power of denial. Denial is an amazing, we can tell ourselves, we cut ourselves all kinds of slack, make all kinds of excuses for ourselves that we wouldn't allow for somebody else. And a mentor will stop us from doing that. So, in the second part of the question, how do we continue to profitably, for instance, run our organizations while mentoring or while demonstrating the right behaviors to the people behind us? So, I had a conversation with a business person maybe a year ago or so, and I said, you need to, if you really want to grow your business for the future, you need to invest in the people in your organization. I said, what are some of the things you've done to improve your leadership in the organization in the last year? And they said, well, we bought new computer systems. We've got new software. Um, we put trackers on the vehicles of our employees. And it's like, wait, stop. That's all management stuff. None of that has anything to do with leadership because leadership is about people and only people. So tell me that's investments that you've made in the business. What are the investments you've made in the people? What have you done to help develop them? And they said, well, we really can't necessarily afford to do that. And it's like, okay, so if you want a sustainable business, forget about the systems, forget about the technology. The sustainability and the future of your business will come from your people. And your number one investment needs to be in your people. Not only can you afford to invest in your people, you can't afford not to. You must invest in your people, and you must demonstrate to them how the qualities, the practices that you use to get where you are. You must demonstrate to them how you did that, how you're doing it, and why it was important to them. Because you could tell them, for instance, to be on time. Tell your employees that punctuality really matters, but then you show up 15 minutes late and your message is now gone. If you want your people to be on time, you need to be on time. You need to model that behavior for your people. And if there's a disconnect between what you say and what you do, your people will do what you do 1,000 times faster than they will do what you say to do. And we forget that. I hear a lot of senior leaders, people who've been around a long time, that will say something. This is to me, this is very silly, but they'll say, "Well, I've earned the right to cut myself some slack, to give myself some advantages." Like, nope. As you ascend up in an organization, what you've done, what you've earned, is you've earned the right to model successful behavior. You have a right, and in fact, you have an obligation to model that successful behavior. Not, I went to a military high school, and the people of the higher ranks would always have this saying that rank has its privileges. And it's like, I believe that early in my career until I began to realize, no, what rank has is its responsibilities. And the primary responsibility is if you've been given influence over other people, is to influence them in a positive way.
Mm. And I think that's incredibly important. And what I'm hearing here, I guess the bridge that many leaders will find themselves on is to take that responsibility and honor it versus the path of ego and power.
Yep.
And so
Yep.
it's very, as I mentioned earlier, it's very difficult um, to tell an aspiring leader, hey, you've got to be honest. You have to show up on time. You have to stay true to your values when the majority of their examples are not doing this. And so
Yep.
typically what you see is you see people in quite high places not doing this. And so again, they will follow that path. And how important is it to keep the ego in check um, as you are leading?
So it's interesting. People ask me, well, is it bad to have an ego? And I said, well, that's like asking me, is it bad to have a pulse? If
Mm,
you're human, you're going to have an ego, you know?
mm,
There's just no way around it. Um, but it's funny when I hear a leader tell me about all the great things they've done, they've done.
mm.
My response to them is typically, you must have a great team supporting you. Because if you do you really believe you did all of that by yourself? Um, the coaching that I give leaders to try to keep their ego where it needs to be is that one of your responsibilities as a leader, because everybody has an ego and it needs to be fed, one of your responsibilities is to feed your people's egos so that they feel good about themselves,
Mm,
within reason, of course, but so that they feel good about themselves, so that they believe in themselves. And you have a supply of ego food when you do something good. The human temptation is to accept credit for it and bask in that light a bit and
mm,
say, yeah, I'm really, really good. But again, keeping in mind your leadership responsibilities, you need to take that ego food that you were just given that feeds your ego, and you need to dispense it amongst your team
mm,
so that they feel as though they've had a role in that success as well. Um, and that will help you keep your ego in check when you realize, no, 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 wait, I've got a bunch of people that supported me in this effort. They can't see me getting all of the credit, or they will stop performing. They just will.
mm,
And so I need to share that with them, so that they realize how 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 important they are to the success of the organization. I will. All truly authentic leaders understand this absolute leadership fact that their success as a leader is completely dependent upon the success of the people they lead.
mm.
And if their people are not successful, then they as a leader cannot be successful.
Absolutely. And then that takes us to the the second part of the equation, I guess, is seeing your staff or your employees or the people you're leading as humans and empathy, and I think sometimes when you're put into a position of power or you work your way up to a position of power, the the quest for success or for financial gain, profits, can override the fact that your team are just human beings who have their own issues, have their own insecurities, and problems in their lives that they may come to work with.
Hmm.
We recently did a chapter about grief, and again, mental health difficulties, not knowing what someone else
Hmm.
is experiencing behind their desk, behind their mask.
Yep.
And so how
Yep.
important is the empathy part of leadership?
Well, Steve, that's something that I've really grown into. And first of all, I would say this, that to the leaders, are actually the people in leadership
Mm,
positions, who would tell their people, leave your personal problems at home. Don't bring
mm,
them into work. You're whistling into the wind. That's not humanly possible. It's just
mm,
not. It would be great if we could have these clear dividing lines and say, okay, I'm going to forget about home now that I'm at work. We, as humans, I don't believe we can do that. But I had an administrative assistant that worked with me several years ago, and she was missing a lot of time. She had to take her daughter to a lot of doctor's appointments. And my initial reaction was, you know, we're paying you to do a job here. You've got to do this job. You've got to figure this out. I don't know what to tell you, but sorry that you got to take your daughter to the doctor, but there's work to be done here, you know? And then I met her daughter. It turns out that her daughter is a real live living human being,
mm,
a person, just like me, who happened to be born with Down syndrome. And that causes a host of different issues. And as I got to know her more and got to know her daughter more, um, it's like I had such admiration for this person, and the balancing act in their lives that they had to make between caring for their daughter and supporting their family.
mm,
And I thought to myself, you know what? This person who initially I didn't understand, had no empathy for, this is really one of the most remarkable people I've ever met, because they struggle with this balance. They know that their bosses want them at work, but they have a, a deep personal need to take
mm,
care of their families. And I learned a lot about empathy from that person, but I learned a lot more. I had no idea that that entire experience, Steve, was going to prepare me
mm.
several years later for the birth of our granddaughter, who was born with Down syndrome.
Wow, so
And
powerful.
I, I, I think I was so thankful for knowing the admin assistant Lisa and meeting her daughter Emily, um, and gaining insight to those challenges, um, and it made me look at everyone differently and say, you know what, as a leader, we need to make judgments about our people. That's a
Mm,
fact, but we have to do it without being judgmental.
mm,
We have to do it understanding that if I were them with their same life experiences, looking at life through their lens, if you will, I would make exactly the same decisions they do.
mm,
I would absolutely make those same decisions. And so I can't be critical of any decisions that someone else makes without knowing everything that goes in to them making that decision. And since I'll never know everything that goes into how they think and how they make decisions, I'll never understand their total life experience. That means that I can't be critical of anyone. And uh, once we understand that, it changes how we interact with everybody.
that's really powerful. To have judgment over your people. without being judgmental. Very, very powerful. I hope our listeners take note of that because that's a very real life experience. You know, you being
Mm-hmm.
in a position of leadership yourself, leading this lady who's struggling to show up on time. And when you find out the why, it
Yep.
can change everything. Um, and you realize she's not actually late. She's actually
Yeah. Yep.
on time for what she
Yeah.
should be on time for. That's so
Yep.
important. And again,
Absolutely.
that goes back to having a relationship with the people that you lead, understanding them as
Hmm.
people. It's not the same rules for all people, different ways you communicate with different team members. It's also
Yep.
important.
So, Steve, I met a guy years and years ago. I used to sell Dale Carnegie training, and I made a call on a gentleman in the United States who ran a company. I didn't know a lot about the company, but he was at a warehouse in a small town in Minnesota, in northern United States, and I went in to visit him to sell him some leadership training. And he said, "Well, before I do business with you, I want you to know something about my company. So let me give you a tour." And he had in this particular building, he maybe had 250 employees. It was a big warehouse facility. And as we went toward the different parts of the warehouse, he was talking to his people. And it dawned on me that he knew everyone's name and he knew things about them and their families. Isn't it little Johnny's birthday this weekend? He's going to be 4 or 5. Wow, they grew up so fast. He knew something about all of his people. And I went back to his office and I said, that's pretty amazing. And he said, why is it amazing? And I said, well, that you know all your people so well. And he said, well, my business is made up of people, of human beings. So I need to know more about my people than any other part of my business. And here's how I do that. He said, every day I get up from behind my desk, which is a tremendous barrier between me and my people, by the way. He says, so I get up from behind my desk and I go out into that building and I conduct an interview. He said, now, I did not say interview. I said interview, INNER, interview, because I want to know about my people. I want to know about their goals, their objectives, their life goals. I want to know about how I can help them achieve those goals and objectives. I want to know how the company can help them. I want to know what the company can do for them and what I can do for them personally. And so every day I conduct an interview, 5 to 10 minutes is all it takes, with at least one of my people, but it's every day. And that person is today one of the 5 richest people in the world. And he would tell you that's why. So it's just when people tell me, I would love to get to know my people better, but I'm a busy executive. I just don't have time. I will tell you that I don't know where uh, his name is Glenn, and I don't know where Glenn is in the world today because he runs businesses all over the world. But I do know that today, Glenn invested at least 5 minutes in getting to know one of his people better, period. He says it's the most important thing he does every single day.
That's exceptional. I'm going to incorporate that into my own life. That's very, very, very powerful. And I think it speaks to consistency. So, we speak about patience, we speak about integrity, we speak about empathy. Um, it's not enough to just do it once. It has to be an everyday thing. It has to become habitual. So it trains the people you're leading to thrive in that environment because it has some patterns, it has some consistency. So now it's part of their system. They're part of your bigger ecosystem, but they've got their own micro systems happening because of the consistency that you've modeled. Which takes me to Twitter. is where we originally connected over a decade ago. And it's no secret that you have over 1 million followers, which is stressful to think about how you manage it all. But before I get into my Twitter conversation, I just want to ask you, what's it like having 1 million followers?
Well, I will tell you this, it's highly informative because I get to see and read a lot of different opinions about everything. And the initial temptation for all of us as human beings, I think, is I, the world would be so much better if everyone just thought exactly like I do. Wouldn't it just be so much simpler? But the reality of it is it's that diversity of opinion. It's that diversity of experiences that make the world what it is. And again, I go back to the fact that I read some stuff and it's like, how in the world could they think that way? But then I realize again that if I were them, with their life experiences, with their challenges, with their background, with the people that are surrounding them, I would think just like they do. Which brings us to an interesting point when I say the people that surround them. I wrote a blog post once about 5 decisions that will change your life. And those 5 decisions are the 5 people who you choose to spend the most time with. Because we are basically a compilation of those 5 people that we spend the most time with. And if we want to be more positive, we need to spend more time around positive people. If we want to be learners and learn more, we need to be around people that are of a similar mindset. Um, Whether we believe it or not, the people that we spend the most time with have tremendous influence on our lives. And um, we want to consider who are those people that I'm spending the most time with, because that's who I will become most like. Um, but the so I'm careful about who I will follow on Twitter too, and how much weight I put into what they say. Um, but it is interesting, and I have X Pro, they call it now, where I have a timeline with everybody that follows me, that I see all their tweets, and you can automate that so it changes on its own. But with 1 million followers, I can't read it because it's a blur, because there are thousands of tweets coming into my timeline every minute, and you literally can't see anything. So I have to do it manually, and I'll check it several times a day. Um, but I've got people from all over the world, all different lifestyles, all different beliefs, um, and it causes me to stop and really think about, what's going on in the world and what's real, and why do people think the way they think, um and then of course with with 1 million followers, there's a whole lot of um disinformation that comes into my timeline too, so you have to be aware of that. I don't This might be the most shocking thing for people to realize, but believe it or not, not everything you read on the internet is true. Some of it's not.
Some of it's not. But one thing I can guarantee is the information that you share on your platform and within your network is well balanced. And so, where I wanted to go with your Twitter conversation is, um, I remember following you in the very early days,
Mhm.
and I still follow you post 1 million followers, but your content is the same. It feels it hasn't changed you in any way, that wasn't necessarily the focal point for you, but it was more about what you were sharing.
So I had someone reach out to me a couple of weeks ago, and they wanted me to be on their podcast to talk to them about how I got 1 million followers. And and I said, well, I hope it's a very, very short podcast, because I actually don't have much of an idea of how I got 1 million followers. But I can tell you this: I believe that people who truly follow me understand that I'm just, and it says so in my bio, but I'm trying to give back. I have been so blessed to have great mentorship in my life. I've been around very smart people who have willingly uh, given their experience to me and helped me grow and learn. And it was never my intention um, to do that on Twitter. I'll tell you a short story on how I got on Twitter. I had a Nokia Symbian smartphone. Symbian was a big operating system back then, and he built a Twitter client, and he said, "Can you test it out for me?" And it's like, well, I don't have, I'm not on Twitter. I don't know anything about Twitter. And he goes, well, you can just start an account, and then you can test out my app for me. And it's like, okay, so I started this account, and my first avatar was a monkey because I figured, well, this is monkey business, so I'll just put a monkey on there. And I tweeted something about leadership, and a couple people followed it. And it's like, now, how did they find me to follow me? This is really weird. And so I tweeted a little bit more, and in a couple of weeks' time, I might have had 20 followers, and so I put my real picture out there, figuring I should probably get that monkey off. Um, but it began to it began to dawn on me that many of the things I learned through the years that I took for granted, other people hadn't learned yet.
Mm.
And I could share that with them through this weird platform called Twitter and maybe make a difference for them. And I made the conscious choice. I saw lots of people selling and marketing and all that stuff, but it's like, nope, I'm going to give back. I'm there's no reason for me to charge for it. Nobody charged me for it. Um, And so I should just try to give back, and I do my best to answer questions for people. I'll get a DM with I'm having this personal issue. Can you help me? And if I can, I will. Um, but I think it's just that willingness to give, consistently give, um, that people started promoting my Twitter feed in their own Twitter feeds. I would occasionally get a radio show or a television show to read a tweet of mine online. And I had a radio show in the Eastern United States that called me and um, wanted to interview me because somebody in New Jersey was contemplating suicide and read one of my tweets and it stopped them. And I don't know who that person was. I don't know what the tweet was. Um, but I became more committed then because it's like if I never make the a difference for another person on Twitter, I made a difference that day. And so I just keep going.
And I think that's just a great example because, in speaking about that, you didn't mention the number 1 million. You didn't, it's almost as though because you're there, you know that it doesn't validate you. However, on the outside, a lot of people strive to have the big numbers and they think that when you get there, all of a sudden your life changes. Because that wasn't a goal of yours, it's just enabled you to carry out your existing goals just bigger, I'm guessing.
Yep. It's funny. I don't I truly don't pay much attention to the numbers on it. And um, every time I post a tweet, um, I hope that it helps one person. I hope that it makes a difference for one person. That somebody says, well, what's a good tweet look like? It's like a tweet that helps a person. That's a
Mm,
great tweet. And but just one, you do all this for one person. It's like, yeah, I would do it all for one person. It just needs to be one.
mm,
Um, it doesn't matter because that somewhere in the future, I believe that person is going to pay it forward, going to help somebody else.
mm.
Um, and that's the remarkable thing about Twitter is the reach that it gives you. um, and you just don't know who it's
Mm,
going to impact.
yeah. But that's leadership, as you said, modeling the
It is.
behavior that you want those who are coming up next to you or
Yep.
behind you. You're modeling that, hey, there is more important things than followers and retweets and likes and shares.
Yep.
The
Yep.
substance, I think, is what I get from you. And that takes me to, as much as I love your leadership and the mentorship you give, but one of my favorites are the facts that you share. They are so random. I love the images that you post with them. Tell us a bit about these random facts that you share in the middle of really great leadership advice.
So somewhere along the line, and I don't actually remember necessarily how it started, but um, I saw in a newsletter somewhere some strange fact um, about something, and so it's like, oh, this is kind of funny. So I posted it, and it got a lot of reactions from people, and so I found another one and I put it out there, and it just turned into something of it took off on its own. And now each Saturday, I will post um, 8 to 10 what I call worthless fun facts,
Mm,
and the more worthless, the better. The more bizarre, the better. Uh, but and most people love them and accept them for what they are. There are a portion of people who believe it's wrecking my timeline to put this junk in the middle of leadership tweets. And it's like, you know what? I have this little personal test that I do every day. I take this test every day. Um, did I have fun today? I have to have a little bit of fun every day. Fun is good. Fun helps us in so many ways. Um, and so I reserve Saturday. I still put some regular leadership content out on Saturdays, but it's a lot of the fun facts. Um, and one of the fun facts has gotten more reaction than any other post I ever made. I put a fun fact out that said a pound of grasshoppers has more protein than a pound of beef. Well, people went crazy. Um, and there were within a day or two, there were a couple 100,000 responses, um, and they were all negative. And they said, if you want to eat grasshoppers, you go ahead and eat grasshoppers. You must be some kind of whack job, crazy person eating grasshoppers. Um, and it's like, wow. And some of them are really bad. We're going to hunt you down and find you, and you shouldn't be promoting eating grasshoppers. And it's like, and I tried to respond to a few of them, and I just said, hey, trust me, I won't eat grasshoppers. I don't I don't want to go near grasshoppers, but it's a fact. It just is. There's more protein in grasshoppers. If you want to eat it, I guess, and there would be beef, but I'm going to have a hamburger, personally. It's remarkable how some of the fun facts have taken off, and really somehow either appealed to people's hopefully nobler motives, but sometimes their worse motives as well. Um, but I'm pretty sure of that number of people that follow me that a bunch of them follow me just for the fun facts on Saturdays.
mm. Well, I share them with a lot of people, and I have done over the years. And I think it really is aligned with how I know you lead, and you lead people, humans, and you're very, very connected, and you understand the balance between, the corporate space, but these are human beings who have families, who have issues, humans that just want to be happy. And it feels as though somewhere along within the past decade or so, we've lost out on the ability, I guess, or the desire to want to have fun. Everything has to be serious, and if you're a motivational speaker, then that's all we want to see from you. If you're a leadership coach,
Hmm.
then do not speak about
Yep.
anything. And this whole idea of censorship and staying in your
Yep.
lane. But we are much more diverse than that, and we have opinions and we have viewpoints on the world that are also important. And so I think you have a great balance of that. And I think for young people, the fun side will attract them to want to get into roles of
Hmm.
leadership for the right reasons, not
Hmm.
necessarily just
Yep.
for power. And so it's almost like you're speaking to people on their level. It's not just crazy business language that is above a lot of people's heads. And I think it's so important. And I know you're very passionate also about the human experience and having fun and being mindful and having good focus. Has this always been a part of your journey, or is this things you've just learned, like through the Down syndrome situation? Have you evolved to become this person, or are these some of your values from day one?
Yeah, I think, Steve, that it's more from day one. I mean, I've always thought that you need balance in your life. One of my early mentors um, asked me why I wanted to be successful. And, I gave, I think, probably the standard answer is, well, I want to make a lot of money. I want to be able to retire early. I want to, and he goes, is that all it's about? He says, it's just making money to pay bills and give it away to somebody else and have something somebody else doesn't have. Is because I was in my early 20s, and he said, if that's all it's about, first of all, you're going to risk burning out really early. He says, but second of all, when you go to work each day, you need to know what's in it for you. And so wherever I've worked, I've been very open since then. When I started to think about, well, what do I want it to be for me? And it's like I want to be able to enjoy my success. In fact, I would tell you that if you can't stop to enjoy your success, you're not actually probably not successful. But um, he says what you need to do is know what's in it for you, so that you can perform better. And so I started asking myself, what do I really want? And it's like, well, more than anything, I want balance. I want to be able to work as hard as I can, but then stop and enjoy the fruits of my labor. And wherever I've worked, I've told an employer, I'll tell this to anybody, I never want to work for a company. Um, I want to work for my family at a company. And when company owners and leaders look at me and go, well, I don't know, I don't want my people thinking that way. It's like if you want a fully engaged, fully committed employee, then you want them working for themselves and their family. That's the way to get them to engage. If you want them to work for a company, a building, an enterprise, um, they will never be fully engaged. They will never have a full life. Um, and the best employees are the ones that don't work for the company. They work at the company for themselves and their families. Those are the best people in your organization. They're the most productive people in your organization. And so early in my career, based on that conversation, I decided whatever happens, and there have been some challenging days, of course, but I'm going to look for the fun part of the day. There's going to be something good in our worst day. I believe there's something good in there if we keep our eyes open. Um, I write about that. You don't need, I say, you don't need sunglasses to look at the bright side of life. You just have to keep your eyes open.
Yes.
It'll be there.
Okay, well, that is phenomenal advice. I guess to round this up, I would ask you, going to put on my perspective of someone right now who is either they don't know if they're a leader, or if they are a follower, or if they have leadership skills, but they like the idea of it. Or maybe someone who's running a business now and it seems to always hit this glass ceiling or this wall. Maybe it's the
Mhm.
case where you have someone who's leading and that barrier is that desk, as you mentioned earlier,
Mhm.
or if it's an online business, maybe that desk is the algorithm stopping you from actually being able to communicate with your people. But maybe someone's just on the verge of giving up that dream of becoming a leader. What would be your three, top three leadership tips for the next generation?
Hmm. Well, that's a great question. So, no, I think number one is to never forget that your leadership is not about you. It's about the people you lead. That when you help them achieve their full potential, when you help them advance and grow, then you succeeded as a leader. It's about them. Um, if if in your mindset your leadership is about making yourself look good, or heaven forbid, using those people to advance your own career, you will always struggle as a leader. Leadership is one of the most rewarding things that we can do um, if we focus our efforts on the people we lead and not focus our efforts on making ourselves look more important or smarter somehow. The second thing I would say is that if you're doubting whether or not you have leadership skills, um, I would say that you have leadership skills. Leaders, despite what you might read some places, leaders are not born, leaders are made. There's never been a doctor who's delivered a baby and held it up and go, now here's a leader. They don't know. They're not born. We develop our leadership skills. And if you have the ability to influence other people, then you have the ability to lead other people. Now, there's one group of people I want to talk about this idea about influence about in particular, because we don't think about this often enough. But the most important leaders in the world are parents. And they have more influence or the potential to have more influence on their children than any other people that will ever be in their children's lives. And as a parent, you're a leader. You're modeling the behavior that you hope your kids will have in the future. And we need to keep that in mind. And our kids are always watching us to see what we say and then to see what we do. And if what we say and what we do match up, then we're likely to be having a positive influence on their life. Understand one of your most important roles as a parent is leading your kids. Think about it that way. Um, and the third tip I would say is this um, a key to effective leadership is communication. The communication, communication, and communication. If if you're struggling as a leader, I would hazard a guess, and it's a pretty educated guess, that your people are not aware of what your expectations are for them, and they are not aware of whether or not they're meeting your expectations. You, because of you're not communicating enough with them on a regular basis, you are putting doubts in their mind about their own abilities, their own performance, about their own future. And that is negatively impacting their attitudes and their productivity. So communication is absolutely a key. I don't believe it's possible as a leader to over communicate.
That is exceptional information, wisdom, lived experience, knowledge, and really powerful starting points for anyone who's considering a pathway or a path of leadership. This is invaluable information that if you put into action, you will see results. And I think this is a great place for us to round off today's conversation um, by saying, what you touched on very early on. It's about the example that you leave for other people, and not necessarily what you tell them to do, but what you show them. And I just want to give you your flowers because you have been showing people for many, many years without any expectation back. I appreciate you. Like I said, you've been invaluable for my own journey. I'm thankful for your contribution. And I thank you for joining us today. And as you said, giving back, because there are a lot of people who will charge for this information. And who knows what leaders may hear this and come up now and say, hey, I listened to this one podcast and that started my leadership journey. So thank you very much for sharing this space with us.
Well, Steve, thank you for the opportunity. And I would tell you that if we have a positive impact on just one person that hears this podcast, it will be a great podcast.
Yeah, to everyone who's listening or who hears this podcast, whatever time, wherever you listen into it, whatever platform, thank you for your time. I hope that you take something positive from it and that it can impact your life in a meaningful way. And if you want more information on my guest, please check the show description. As I said, you can follow him on Twitter at Lead Today. And until next time, stay blessed, and I wish you better days.